Okay, fine. I see the comments. It's finally time for the lance. What's that noise? Oh, they left a note. The Angry Bee Swarm all vote for Insect Glaive. Signed, the Angry Bee Swarm. Well, as of the other day, they are allowed to vote, so... Okay, first, let's get a show of hands. Who knows Final Fantasy IV? Okay, you, yeah, you for sure. Now, who likes Kain from Final Fantasy IV? Well, you can thank him for the Insect Glaive, probably. Insect Glaive is actually one of the newest weapons in the series, if you didn't know. It started in Monster Hunter 4, or 4U, for anyone not from Japan, and as much as I'm nowhere near certified to hold a massive stick, it's a fun weapon. I'm sure you all tried it for a bit, and then after getting mauled by your local bear, you dropped it, swore it off, and cried in the corner. Was that just me? It has had a pretty solid track record for weapon designs despite its infancy. It's great for magical girls, aura farmers, and everyone in between, so I thought I'd look at all 29 of the Wilds designs and give my opinion. I know nobody asked for because there's totally not enough of that in the Monster Hunter fanbase. Also, I'm not doing Kinsects. That swarm of angry bees ate them all. It was actually really disturbing. They even got the robot. Alright, let's get the expedition one out of the way, because it's gonna happen every single time. It does give me a chance to talk about a lot of the common elements you'll see though, like a blade, and a stick, and the $5 princess one shoved at the opposite end. Yeah, it's not on all of them, but it's certainly a common design element, so I figured I'd mention it now rather than wait 5 entries in. Oh, the rating? Honestly, a 6 is sturdy enough. Being honest, I really don't expect any of the expedition weapons to break out of that middle range, and I don't think that there's any diehard expedition tree fans out there, so yeah, you could take a 6. Now, the red paint Rathians have some neat stuff to them. The tip actually folds out when they're unsheathed. Crazy. Now, do you see that little decal on the Rathalos Glaive? Well, for the Guardian, it's whiter than Wit Studio Usopp. Differences aside, the Rathalos Glaives are actually pretty cool. I like the dragon at the top, and it does the thing I like with the Rathalos weapons, and it makes the tip burning hot molten metal. The bottom half on both are shaped like Rathalos' tail, and that ominous crystal poking out like a huge splinter actually changes color based on the element of the glaive you're using. And that goes for all of the glaives that have like a little glowing crystal, so that means GOG is actually a bit weaker. We'll cover it more when we get to it, but it loses that unique design element of changing the color based on what element you're using. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, the glaives get a good 8 each for a pretty good and simple way to adapt Rathalos into a stick. Now, after an okay start, we're just going to take a straight nosedive real quick. And as much as the Iron Tree Glaive is the first to actually use the bottom half for another blade instead of a bulb or a crystal, it's just kind of boring. I'm gonna be honest. It's sad to see that the Iron Tree tends to be so plain in New World, since in Old Gen it was just a hunting rifle with a bayonet, and that's a really fun idea. So it's not like they don't have the capability of doing something like this, it's just mainly influence from World trying to keep things more grounded with designs, unfortunately. Now, I know there's some World fans out there that aren't quite sure what I mean, so let me explain it for you. They tried to use the iron and bone weapons as a base for the designs and have the weapon build as it got farther in the upgrade tree. This is a pretty commonly known thing, which in reality is a really fun concept and works with Monster Hunter, I think. But the way that they went about it did kind of homogenize a lot of the weapons and made them lose their uniqueness in the process for the more plain weapon types. I'm sure I don't need to show the Great Jagras one again. I think it gets a 4 since there's some redeeming qualities to it, like the blade shapes, but it's not anything really that special, unfortunately. Is anyone else tired of seeing Jin Dahad? Just me? Oh, well, I guess I'm the weird one then. I'm gonna be honest, I wish I had more fanfare for him, but I think I'm just kind of tired of talking about Jin after the last 3 now being Jin Dahad. Are we sure this isn't the Switch Axe? It isn't? Okay, this is a bit of a weird one, but it is a giant, large battle axe with the front blade coming down to the bottom half of the glaive, which takes some elements from the Rathalos glaive with the huge crystal at the bottom and some influence from the dual blades, having 3 blades instead of just 1 solid blade. It's nice, but it just feels like kind of a scrap design for Switch Axe that they couldn't figure out how to switch into a blade form, so I guess a 7? Alright, this next glaive bucks. It doesn't ask your consent to take your daughter to prom. It slaps you on the ass as it walks out the door with your wife, her friends, and every woman in a province-wide reach. Ebony Odo has one of the coolest glaives I've ever seen. The only thing I could try to nitpick is that I'd want the handle to be a bit longer before it goes into the bladed ends of the weapon, but that's such an extreme reach I'm not counting it. I think the Guardian Wilk works really well in the upper part of the glaive, since along with the color, there's some really cool warping on the tip that isn't visible on the other end. Anyways, water is wet, Ebony Odo gets another 10, the skinned rat with the plague is on a generational sweep now. Alright, you know those very real and very human contraptions people have attached to toilets? You know, the one on screen right now? That's all I can see with the Balahara Glaive. Like, it works. The little ridges are pretty faithful to Bala's design, and a weird detail I do like a lot is being able to see the trigger on the pole when you're zipping around like a rabid hornet flying around a mountain of sugar. However, I can't not picture that thing tearing up an asshole. Is that too graphic? Really, it's fine. It could be a lot worse, but I would say a 6 is good for the Dune Worm. Now, I'm sure you all know Mr. Glasshouse over here, right? Well, he's finally back again with arguably one of his cooler designs out of his 8 weapons, this cool looking magical girl wand. What do you mean it's not a magical girl wand? Look at the design. How is this not just some Sparkle on Sisters accessory right there? At this point, we just need Wilds to have a crossover with Sailor Moon and it'll all be complete. All jokes aside, it's a great design. The tip honestly looks like a long spear that Gemma worked in the horns we scraped off Ray, while the light in its lies slowly fades as the last feeling it feels is the faint throb of numb pain as we tore into its scales and body to create the newest piece of our Raydao thigh highs. What? Too dark? I'll give it a nice 8 for Ray. Hopefully he gets better from his chronic case of death though. Speaking of death, look at Peepaw. I hear he's recovering really well from the SNS video. Maybe you should go back to the doctor. You still look a little green around the gills. Ugh. Now, Chada's glaive is neat. It's a little basic, but I guess that's what you get for Chada being the intro monster. That aside, I think it's a pretty solid design. It's not winning any awards, but I like the bulbous shape at the bottom half, and it also folds out from the top. That's kind of all the small design details with the glaives aside for the super unique ones, so the flip out won't really be mentioned past the centuries since it's just a little redundant to keep bringing it up. Now, I have a weird issue with this one, if I'm being honest. Why doesn't it branch from the bone path instead of the iron path? It visually seems to be made out of bone, unless Gemma learned how to transmutate materials when I wasn't looking. I hate to do this to old Peepaw over there, but he's gonna get a 7 like his last appearance. It's good, but really, that's it. Feel free to leave your get well soon cards in the comments below. I'll make sure to read it to him after the video. Well, it's flagship time again, and Arkveld and Guardian Arkveld just kind of look the same. This time they at least get a little small edge of the Guardian blade to give a bluish purple glow, but like, it's not even like the dual blades where it gets some big change when you fulfill a certain condition. It's not a terrible design. I like the massive trigger and it's fine, I guess, but I worry that the farther we get into this series, there's going to be some very obvious Arkveld weapons where they struggle to make the designs work more than others. I guess a 7 is fine for both. Like aside, because I know you guys all were saying that you wanted more nerd shit in these, I went and checked the flagship weapons for Rise and World respectively, just the base games, not the expansions, just to see if those games also had issues with the flagship weapons designs, and honestly, I was kind of surprised how consistently good Nergigante and Magnamalo's weapons were. World and Rise's base game flagships didn't have like a weird gap in their R8 weapon design quality, but Arkveld's feels a lot more scattered, which is unfortunate because I think Ark as a monster is the strongest design out of the 3. They just seem to have a harder time translating the design over to some weapons while still maintaining Ark's more unique design elements, like the chains, for example. Anyways, unnecessary tangents aside, we gotta cover the bone weapon eventually, and yeah. I mean, I like the shape of it. I think the curves and the bends in the bottom half are neat, and the little spikes up top are a good way to break up the monotony of the design, but it's really not enough to save it. I don't really have much to say about it, other than I can't wait for the big design revisions for the Iron and Bone tree when the expansion comes out eventually. It gets the 4. Okay, I think we're finally out of the dry spell here for a bit. Ajarakan's glaive is the first in the mini trend we'll see, similar to the dual blades and SNS getting the occasional change up, like the dual blades getting axes or claws, and the SNS getting a flail or axe. There's so many axes in this game, I'm just realizing it. We have tridents! I wonder why they chose Ajara for a trident though. Kinda seems like a weird choice. I think a lot of it is carried by the refreshing design theming, but it's a really, really good glaive. The staff part of the design is simple enough while still staying away from the over-designed curse of the dual blades. I like how reserved they were with the molten metal that makes up a lot of Ajara's body. Yes, I actually figured out what it was. And hey, it's even dressed for the occasion with its little tie-up near the trident head. I was actually kind of nervous Ajara would be stuck in the mid-range for its weapons, but this is such a strong balance of its themes and design that I had to give it a 9. Props to the exploding monkey, he knows how to get graceful with it. And another revolutionary shakeup, we have the first Lalabarina weapon that doesn't get a 10. It gets a 9. Now hold on. Put your pitchforks down. I do like it a lot still, but I think one part I'm a little let down by is the bulb on the lower half never blossoms. I tried everything. I tried getting all 3 essences. nothing. And it's a bit sad. The blade part is this huge tuning fork, it seems, which doesn't immediately make a lot of sense with Lala's design, but I think it still looks very nice. Now, if I'm being honest, I think I like the Rarity 7 of this one a bit more. The blade's got a lot of little slits in it, and it seems to be shaped a lot more like the nail from Hollow Knight, which does give a little bug influence to the look of it again. Now, you could joke and say that the Rarity 8 looks like Hornet's big-ass head, and that's why I think it still stays up pretty high, because I'm a big Silksong fan, but I was kind of surprised that this one didn't feel as strong to me. We already had the rating at the beginning. If you want, you can just rewind for that. Well, it's been a little while since we had the other spider on this list, but Nursey's back, and I shaved him bald. I think this one's another half-like, half-don't-like situation because weirdly enough, I liked the bottom half of the weapon a lot more than the blade part. Maybe it's the anchor shape to it, or maybe it's the big glowing eye on the bottom half that's distracting my ADHD-soaked brain, but I have to say the bottom half is the better part of the design for me. Although that's not to rule out the shaft. I like the little handguard that adds a bit more of a mechanic look to it. It fits well with the weapon having a little air cannon built in to help propel you into the heavens. The half and half glaive sits at a 6 for me, I think. It could go up by 1 if I'm feeling generous though. We're back to everyone's favorite ally, Kutku, and it's pretty solid. I like the unique shape of the blade part, it's silly, fun, and I'm very whimsy-pilled. And the scales and fur coming into the staff portion helps keep it from being fairly generic. However, the bottom part is really fun. It uses Kutku's mouth and that weird glowy bit to make a little cuckoo face. It's adorable. Now, something I'm noticing after we've seen a few Kutku weapons, he honestly feels like an in-universe mascot character, the way that there's usually some form of Kutku plushie in the game, or the way they usually go for a more cutesy look for the weapons where they can. It's honestly just so cute. I love this little Mickey Mouse ass monster. 10 points and a little kiss on the forehead from me. Mwah. Alright, we've had it too good for too long. When's the bullshit happening? Ah, yep, there's Gulgur. There's Gulgur. I knew I smelled a fraud. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think me and Fulgur will ever get along, and it's a shame because I like his armor and a few of his weapons, but most of them just feel like beating a dead horse of world design's bad, and I don't want to keep doing that. So instead, we'll just focus on the pros, like the weapon shape. It's unique. It has this more caveman-esque club look to it than a blade, but I like how the weapon looks like one solid thing you just harvested off a Gulgur rather than a bunch of components put together. And to give it a little credit, I like that since Anjanath is just a real T-Rex, Thunderbreath and all, Capcom took its weapon designs in a very prehistoric direction. It's a fun way to use the species his design is based off, and I respect it. But sadly, it just doesn't do it for me. I'm sure there's some fans for this one, but this one's just purely my own bias, unfortunately. Will a 6 keep me from being hit with the Curse of Ra and like 1,000 volts of lightning? Alright, I think we're done with the roller coaster rankings now. We're on a pretty steady incline, I think, from here on out. Rathalos on Estrogen has a pretty awesome glaive, actually. It's simple and effective. The thorn vines make a very cool heart shape in the middle there, and I love the Wrath skin being used for the grip in the middle there. Or at least I think that's Wrath skin. Maybe it's just that time of the month for the Queen of Monster Hunter. There's even this neat little spiky shackle on the bottom half to really complement the rest of the design and signify that Rathalos probably calls his wife the old ball and chain on Facebook. Probably a safe 8 because I gotta support one of the OG Monster Hunter girly pops. Now, who's ready for the Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate Glaze Off? Because Gore's Glaive is so unbelievably pretty. It's your standard run-of-the-mill Gore Magala design trends, but it does something extremely cool on the lower half. For people who don't know, that bit of gold is actually a little nod for Gore's Pathways of Fate. It can either shed its black and purple scales and be born anew into a beautiful, lustrous Shigeru Magala, or fail to molt, either through another Shigeru being alive when it tries to molt, or just it's so traumatized it can't finish the process. Being stuck in the halfway state, they slowly die a painful and slow death as the pain erodes its mind and body until it's nothing but a berserk, mindless, half-dead, chaotic Gore Magala until it eventually dies on its own. Honestly, a bit of a skill issue if you ask me, but now you see why Gore is such a popular monster and one of the coolest flagships in the series. To either shine brilliantly among the stars or be disfigured and cursed to its slow, inevitable demise makes this weapon the easiest 10 of the series. Any weapon that tries to tell a story within its design deserves it, easily. We're going bar for incredible weapon designs, with Blaganga having an actual bow staff as its glaive. If you told me it was based on Sun Wukong, I'd easily agree. It's such a fun and creative way of satisfying people who want to cosplay someone like Aang or Goku, or an appropriately themed weapon for some kind of Infernape cosplay. They must have known how pretty it was with the light gold on the design when they gave it the name Immaculate Blizzard. It also handles the gaudy issues I have with the last 2 entries by being more Blaganga, by having these little tufts of Blaganga pelts at each end, and it also just adds a bunch of coloring to the staff. It's strong and simple, unique, and it's a highly versatile and fun look for Blaganga, so I'm happy giving it another 10. Okay, I'll relax on the 10s. We have Gravios up up next anyways, and while it's certainly not a 10, it's a top contender. An aspect of Gravios that doesn't seem to get shown in its weapons a lot is the fact that this bitch stinks!
I hope my horrible ugliness won't be a distraction to you.
Not at all, boy!
He's always prepping up his poison or fire gas attacks, which I understand is hard to translate into a lot of the more conventional weapons in the game, like longsword, hammer, or SNS, but they actually did a decent job with the glaive, making it look like the blade is attached to the bottom of this hose-looking bit to try and simulate a fumigator look. My only issue is that it's just a bit clunky. It's very fun to look at, but it seems very unpractical, so a comfortable 8 seems fine. Okay, it's gonna be the only time you see any praise for an Ardean weapon here. This glaive nearly made me learn the weapon back when Wilds came out. The incredible spiral design, everything about it is just really, really cool, even though it's not realistic in any way, because that's what they try to go for. See, the little sliver in the middle is actually the core of the weapon, while the twirling and spinning bit is the actual blade. I can't put into words how cool this is. You get to do some crazy, fun Gurren Lagann type shit, and as goofy as it looks, I can't help but love it, so another easy 10. And then the Gog weapon takes that design and both improves it and takes something away a bit. The Gog weapon has a multi-part harpoon tip, and while that does take away the cool moving spiral look of the Ardean weapon, it's still uses that metal ribbon on both ends of the weapon. It stretches out the core of the Ardean weapon to be a more sturdy center for the weapon, and while under the harpoon tip and the back end of the glaive, it peels into this super cool drill pattern. It's just barely under the Ardean look for me, even though I think it has a lot more going on visually. It's a 9. It's just a great way of interpreting the enhancement to the Ardean glaive, I think, without completely throwing out the original design. Oh my god, I don't know why this one was so draining for me this time around. Maybe it was the thousands of bee stings, but I really have no clue. But anyway, we're finally almost done now, just the title updates layered, and the one unique glaive from Kunafa that we stole from a local and never gave back. Now, all of Mizu's weapons clearly are based off of some kind of real feudal Japan weaponry, that's just an established fact at this point. So it's no surprise to say that Glaive Japan is based off the Naganaki. It seems to really follow the Dual Blades' influence here, with the same type of Sakura Blossom pattern on the blade. However, the staff clearly has a lot of thought put into it. Lots of grips, small lattice pattern of Mizu fur in the middle, and some nice rope from one grip to another. It all ties together pretty well, so I could say a nice 7. Now with the Kung Fu Panda Dragon Zoshia, I have to say it's a vast improvement from the Dual Blades. It does a good job at showing off Zo's black fleshy bits, and the Wilk is in such a pretty pattern near the bottom of the glaive. The top half does go back to that fishnets look, which makes me very worried to look up Zoshia on Google Images. And I can't ignore that really pretty purple core embedded in the bottom half of the glaive. It's a nice glaive shape, and honestly, it's a solid 8 and a lot of hope for some of these other weapons to live up to this. Alright, I'm ready. I'm pumped. This list has been really cool so far, and I'm eager to finish off with a... We were on such a good track there, weren't we? Now, good old Reggie isn't a terrible design for sure, but it's certainly one of the weaker Reggie designs, I think. I kind of wish it wasn't just the two ends being themed around him, since it makes the metal pipe stand out like a sore thumb. Now, that's not to say that the Sergio stuff that is on the weapon isn't necessarily bad. The top hook is a really cool way to insinuate his whole bleeding mechanics. It's just really unfortunate that the center is so bland in comparison to the other aspects of the glaive, so unfortunately it just gets stuck at a 7. Alright, I have to be honest here. This is the only laggy weapon I like. If I'm being honest, it feels like the only laggy weapon that actually seems to use the fact that he's a water monster. You know, one of the most important aspects of his fight. I'm honestly shocked that we don't have more aquatic themed laggy weapons rather than just doing very vague whirlpool illusions. It seems like something that should be more important within his loadout, since they had to integrate an entirely new style of combat just for his inclusion in Wilds. To actually talk about the glaive here, the back end has some really light orange spikes and some sea stone to finish off the back tip, and they use the top half like a fisherman's trident, or as it's more commonly referred to, Poseidon's trident, if you know Greek mythology. Watch none of the other laggy weapons beat a 9. Take your bets now for the next year or however long it takes for me to make the rest of these ratings. Now with TU3, we finally have another chance for me to be autistic about Final Fantasy. Unless you like the other videos on my channel, then this is just a normal Tuesday for you, I guess. Oh, one more weapon alongside his greatsword in SNS, and it's an entirely new design instead of just taking a design from 14, and while it's fairly simple, this is just appealing to me. I can't help it. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, so seeing a Final Fantasy style weapon designed specifically for Wilds is always going to do well for me. It also shares the trait with the SNS where it's sheathed and it's completely hidden on your hunter's back, which just adds aura points to an already sick design, though with the other weapons having more clear influences, with the SNS being more based off of something the Warrior of Light would use. I mean, the actual guy, not the Final Fantasy XIV one, and the greatsword being based off a pre-existing weapon in 14, but we'll get to the greatsword eventually. I kind of wish they applied that to the glaive though, like maybe taking influence from a character like Kain or one of the sealed weapons from 5, you know, the game Omega was created in. Am I allowed to give the collab monster design a 9? I'm not gonna get mauled by a wild pack of bears from Twitter for this. Maybe I'll workshop a little collab monster video just to see if I would throw in some good curveballs there or something. I don't know, let me know if you want that. Now these last two are like completely two different ends of the same chart, where one is the paid layered weapon and the other is the Kunafa spear. One is a simple spear and the other one is this distant technological thing that kind of looks like you would see it in Pragmata. Now with the Kunafa spear, it's just a wooden spear. Its simplicity is neat, and it is just supposed to be a weapon that isn't necessarily made for hunting, more so self-defense and shepherding. Since really the Kunafa villagers didn't even try to hunt anything like Doshagama until we showed up, but I just don't really like it, I guess. Not to say about the twig and flint spear, so I guess it's a 4. And finally the Cosmoloid Glaive, which honestly, I think it's one of the weaker of the batch. Its sheath design is really cool because it just takes the form of headphones on your hunter with a nice little headdress on the back of the headphones. It's actually a really creative idea, if I'm being honest. Especially if you add in the unsheathed look that has the small speaker parts pulsating on the top and bottom of the glaive. It's really, really cool, and it does a good job of adapting the headphone look into the unsheathed look. I'm glad these are really well designed because they cost me 11 bucks for the whole set and armor, but I think there's enough quality and care put into them that it's kind of worth the price. So an 8 is fair for one of my less favorite looks for the Cosmoloid set. Okay, another weapon checked off the list, which means we now get to add them all up and see how it holds up overall. As a reminder, Dual Blades came out to a total of 225 and SNS got a 237, and for Insect Glaive it got 229, which means it fits snugly in second place. Insect Glaive had a lot of really strong designs, especially in the later half there. It could be since it's a newer weapon, so they have more experience creating designs that they can apply to Insect Glaive. It makes me really excited for newer weapons like Charge Blade and Swax. Okay, all done now. Honestly, at this rate, the expansion's gonna be out by the time I get to the other 11 weapons, so maybe the next one will actually be Lance. Nah.